Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to the channel. Today I want to show you how I'm going to put steering wheel controls on my 2009 Silverado. So it didn't come with them. I don't know if you guys have ever had a car without them. Once you've had them, it's a pain. I'm constantly touching the steering wheel looking for them. And there is an easy way to add these. Well, it's semi-easy. There is some cutting required, but I'm going to show you in this video. Alright, so your first step is going to be to loosen the battery. So you want to unhook it to let the airbag modules go dead. So 10 millimeter on the front and the back side, pull those loose, and then it's a good idea to let it set for, I'm going to let it set for 30 minutes. Probably 10 would be good, but just to be safe, I'm going to let mine set for 30. Alright, so once the airbag module has died, like I said, 10 minutes is probably good enough. I let mine set for 30. I had some other stuff to do. The next step is to locate these two little holes. There's one there, and then there's one here on the other side of the steering wheel. And that is to release the airbag itself. There's two little spring-loaded pieces that come down to hold the airbag in. Now for this, you're going to need two Allen keys, one for each side. One that's big enough to fit in there, but not too small. So you're going to use those to push this in on both sides, and I'll show you a picture after we're finished removing this so you can see what it looks like, what you're actually using. You're going to have to go in pretty straight, so just take your time. Alright, so once you get the airbag removed, you pull the two clips, and I'll show you in just a second, but make sure that you put this with the trim facing up, just kind of out of the way. Alright, so to remove the airbag, of course, you pop those two spring-loaded levers back. You can see them in here. That's what you're pushing through the hole. And then your two airbag connections, there's a little plastic clip. I've put it back in this one, but you pull this clip up and then push the two sides and just remove that. Alright, so the next step is to take a T30 and remove the basket that holds the airbag. So there's four of them, one here, 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 and here. Now make sure that you look at where these wires are coming out and don't pinch them or get them behind anything when you're putting it back together. Just take note of where the wires come out. Alright, the next step is you're going to need to remove the horn. So the plug that goes to the horn. So that's this guy right here. Just pop that off, and then the basket will be free to come out. I wanted to show you guys what you're pushing on when you're trying to pull the airbag out. It's these little springs right here. You're hitting the bottom side of that and swinging it out of the way so it allows it to come loose. Anyway, on to the next step, which will be removing this screw, the grounding screws here, all the way around. To remove those, you're going to need a T15, and you're going to take those four out. Alright, so once those guys are removed and loose, make sure you take note of where they come through as well. You're going to pop this off, and it's just a clip that holds this in, and each side's individual. Do the same thing to the other side. On the left side that already has the cruise control functions, make sure that you unplug the plug that goes to it, and then we're ready to move on to cutting. So as you can see, one side is cut out for the switches and the other side is not. So this is probably the hardest part of this whole project, is making sure that you get the cut right. So just take your time. I'm actually going to make a template on this side and then transfer it to this side, and then just cut a little bit at a time and test fit your switches to make sure that you haven't cut too much and that the switch seats properly. Alright, you can see I made a template for one side, then I transferred it to the other and I marked it. It's kind of hard to see with the sun, but I marked it, and I'm going to go just shy of this line so we make sure that we don't cut too much off. And then we'll test fit the switch. Alright, so now you can see I've got my piece cut. Now what I did was I marked it and I cut a little bit off at a time and kept putting the switch up there to make sure that it fit, but I didn't cut too much off. The next thing I did was I followed that up. I used a Dremel and a cutoff wheel, and then I used a cartridge roll, and then I used a file just to smooth everything down. And then of course when you get done, make sure that you vacuum all the other stuff off. And then you're going to have to find two screws to mount the switch to the panel itself. I just have some extra screws laying around and found a couple that worked. So our next step is we're going to thread this harness out. So the harness itself, you don't have to mess with the airbag harness, but you're going to unclip this guy and you're going to thread it out. Make sure that you kind of take note of which direction it comes in. So you need, this is the last on this side, trace it all the way back and pull it out on this side. That's the way we're going to put the new one in, is from the left to the right as well. Now, in order to get the new harness in, I did have to take these two out on either side just to give me some room to fish that old harness out and the new harness in. With these big plugs on it, it makes it kind of hard to get out from behind this steering wheel itself. So without pulling the steering wheel off, you can loosen that piece of plastic trim. I did not take the top two out, which probably would have been a little easier, but just a side note. And now the new harness is in. Obviously, we need to thread it back. Make sure you get it in these little clips and it's plugged in. And then of course we have the new switch for the side, and then the original one for the other side. And we're ready to put the basket back in. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and put our switches on either side and plug those in. And then we're gonna be ready to put the basket in. Make sure that you, like I said, marked or remember where the wires go. These go on the top side of that basket, and make sure there's no interference with any of the other wires as you're putting it back together. All right, so we have all the panels put back on, the wiring hooked up. There's little pieces here, tabs that the wiring goes behind. Make sure you do that on either side. Got the pieces hooked up on both sides of the top and the bottom. Now we can put the basket in place and start finishing up. All right, so the basket's back in, the switches are back in, everything's tight. Next step is we're gonna hook up the airbag. Make sure you push these clips back in. And I just want to show you guys the factory gap. GM has a gap right there. You can see it right above the switch. And I have about the same gap on this side, but my bottom gap is a little better than theirs. So even GM has a little trouble getting that straight. You can order a different steering wheel if you decide you don't want to cut your factory steering wheel. I decided that was a cheaper option for me. And then we're going to go ahead and put the airbag in, hook the battery back up, and then we'll test it to make sure everything works. Alright, so everything's hooked back up and back together. So we are going to test the volume. And it is working on the upside and on the downside. Channel change is working. Source is working. Everything seems to be working correctly. So this is the way you add steering wheel controls if you don't already have them. So I will post in the comments everything you need as far as the part numbers. And if you guys have any questions, just post them below. And thanks for watching. Subscribe to see what happens next with this truck. Alright, so here's just an extra piece of information, guys. When I was pulling this apart, or actually putting it back together, these little plastic clips here that go in the airbag plug itself, they're retainer clips. I actually busted one. You can see here the difference in the one that I busted and the one that I didn't. So when I turned the car back on, the service airbag light was on, and turns out that is the issue. So I'll list the part number down below. Just try to be really careful when you're putting those back in. Mine just got moved a little bit and it snapped right in half. So you can order them. I ordered 2 new ones just in case, and I'll list that part number down below. But just one other thing to watch for when you're doing this.